If you grew up with Five Nights at Freddy's, you know FNaF 3 is one of the most debated games in the entire series. Some people loved it, some people hated it, and honestly, I get both sides. But for me, it wasn't bad, it was just unpredictable. The sound design, the constant system failures, and the lore packed into just 5 nights made it stressful, and also fascinating, which is part of why I love FNaF 3. So hey everybody, I'm Jeeps, and today we're breaking down everything that makes FNaF 3 unlike any other game in the series. Consider subscribing so we can reach our goal of 1K subscribers, and with that said, let's begin. One of FNaF 3's biggest impacts on the community came from its teasers. Before the game even released, fans were still processing the chaos of FNaF 1 and 2, which dropped just months apart between August and November of 2014. Then barely 5 months later, a third game was already on the way. But before its release, Cawthon, the creator of the series, began building anticipation through a series of mysterious teasers on his website, Scott Games. During this period, Scott released 9 separate teasers, most of them being pitch black with a faint image barely visible in the center or off to the side, and some could only be seen by lowering the contrast and boosting the brightness. Scott had a habit of hiding these clues in his teasers, but over time fans caught on and now it's kind of a tradition. Every new image meant another round of decoding. These teasers revealed everything from glimpses of Springtrap to the scattered remains of FNaF 2 animatronics, and even the phantom versions of Balloon Boy, Chica, and Withered Foxy. One teaser in particular featured the words, "It's all in your mind," leading fans to believe that these characters were hallucinations, and they weren't exactly wrong. Each of these animatronics also carried this burnt, scorched texture that fueled countless theories across the community, but I'll save the character breakdowns for later in the video. There's a fantastic video made by this channel called Character History covering the FNaF 3 teasers, and after this video, if you want more context, I 100% recommend watching their video. But as for now, back to the video. After the final teaser for FNaF 3 dropped on January 26th, 2015, the game came out less than 2 months later on March 2nd, and when it did, players were met with this eerie, burned down atmosphere. Flashes of the old restaurant, a new phone guy, the phantom animatronics, and one character who could actually kill you, also known as Springtrap. And if you're interested, we actually learned his name from a Steam forum post Scott made about beta testing almost a decade ago. Buried in the text were a bunch of repeated letters, and when the fans pieced them together, it spelled out, "My name is Springtrap." It was actually a pretty cool detail. So FNaF 3 brought in new mechanics, characters, and lore questions, but what really split the community was the gameplay. And honestly, it makes sense why. Now personally, I've always been pretty neutral about FNaF 3's mechanics. I've only played the game maybe 3 to 5 times myself, but the gameplay always felt a little off, especially compared to the flashlight and door systems from FNaF 1, 2, and 4. Instead, FNaF 3 focused on using audio cues to lure Springtrap around the building. It was less about survival instinct and more about managing chaos. And then there were the phantom animatronics, easily some of the most frustrating parts of the game. They could jump scare you at random times just for looking at them for a split second. And if you did get hit by one of those jump scares, that's when another mechanic kicked in, the control panel. On your left, you could reset the ventilation, audio devices, and camera systems to keep everything from completely breaking down. If a phantom animatronic jump scared you, the ventilation would shut down, and the room would be filled with flashing amber lights. The audio devices were even more critical. If they went offline, you couldn't lure Springtrap away from your office at all. And the camera system handled visual errors like the camera blacking out or glitching throughout the night. It was a simple system, but those constant phantom jump scares drove players insane. Rage, panic, frustration, you name it. Still, once you figured them out, they were actually pretty easy to avoid. For example, Phantom Freddy would slowly walk past your office window, and all you had to do was pull up your monitor to block him. And for the ones who would appear on the cameras, you just had to drop your monitor fast enough. Once you cracked that counter mechanic, managing Springtrap got a lot easier. So honestly, you have to admit, the mechanics themselves were not that terrible. Even the new vent system didn't add that much beyond a little extra pressure. Now when it comes to atmosphere, FNaF 3 completely nailed it. The game might have had mixed opinions on gameplay, but no one can deny how unsettling it felt the moment you booted up the game. Everything about Fazbear's Fright felt wrong. The peeling walls, the constant static, the faint echoes in the vents, it wasn't just another pizzeria anymore, it was a recreation of horror, built from the ashes of what came before. The sound design did a lot of the heavy lifting. Distant banging, muffled footsteps, that constant hum of broken machinery. You could feel how empty the place was, yet it always seemed like something was watching you. It wasn't scary in the typical jump scare way. It was slow, psychological, and suffocating. That's what made the game so effective. Even if a lot of people didn't see it that way, when you stop for a second and really look at the environment, you realize how genuinely creepy it feels, especially when you're playing alone. But while the mechanics were unique and the atmosphere undeniably unsettling, none of it would have worked without the characters. So let's take a moment to dive into them. FNaF 3 has roughly 8 main characters, though that number can change depending on how you look at it, whether you count minigame characters or the shadow animatronics, but here I'm mainly talking about characters that drive the gameplay mechanics. This section splits naturally into 2 parts, the Phantom animatronics and Springtrap, who is the main antagonist of FNaF 3. For the Phantoms, we have Freddy, Chica, Foxy, Balloon Boy, the puppets, and Mangle. These are basically a mix of animatronics from the previous restaurants. As most fans know, Fazbear locations have a habit of burning down thanks to one particular individual. From the scorch marks on these phantoms, we can assume that they came from those past restaurants. I went over most of their mechanics in the last section, but aside from that, their design is just really cool. And honestly, facing them for the first time is one of the creepiest moments in the game. However, Springtrap is a different story. By now, almost everyone knows that William Afton is trapped inside, but FNaF 3 was the first game to actually prove it. If you're playing normally and lose, there's a rare 1 in 1,000 chance that one of the 3 unique death screens will appear. Some show a corpse trapped inside the Springlock suit, while others depict Springtrap struggling to remove it, likely in extreme pain. When players first discovered these screens, it was genuinely creepy, but for me, it's just a really cool detail that adds depth to the game. In terms of gameplay, Springtrap is primarily avoided using audio cues, but once he reaches your office, there's no stopping him. You might even catch him peeking around the corner before he attacks, adding another layer of tension. And interestingly, we don't learn that Springtrap is William Afton from any of these screens, but rather the revelation comes from the minigames, which give the full story behind the character. Minigames were first introduced in FNaF 2, but FNaF 3 really showed their potential for storytelling, and especially with the series. This was the first game to clearly demonstrate how minigames could reveal the story piece by piece. FNaF 2 did something similar, but it wasn't as obvious. You had to work a lot harder to piece things together. With FNaF 3, the narrative is still fragmented and some of the minigames are up to interpretation, but it's much easier to understand what's happening. To start the FNaF 3 minigames, players had to pick up on clues hidden between nights, completing small tasks that gradually unfolded the story, all while still defending the office. These steps ranged from clicking on cupcakes in the cameras to trigger minigames, entering secret codes on the walls, spotting Shadow Bonnie on the desk, and more. Each little action added a new piece to the narrative, making the story feel like it was unfolding right in front of you. Each of these minigames puts you in control of a different character, whether it's Mangle, Toy Chica, Balloon Boy, Fredbear, or Shadow Bonnie. In the first minigame, which appears on the second night, you collect a cake and then distribute it across the other minigames to the crying children. All of these minigames build towards one final game, Happiest Day. Here, all of the crying children finally receive their cakes, and one last cake is given to Golden Freddy. As the balloons rise, it's a clear visual that their souls have been freed, providing one of the few genuinely hopeful moments in the entire series. After the final night, this leads to a confrontation with William Afton. You play as one of the children he murdered, approaching him while he's visibly scared, wielding a knife and trying to threaten the ghost children. In a last-ditch decision, Afton runs for the old Springlock suit, thinking the children fear the golden animatronic, but as he laughs, the Springlock snaps shut, trapping him inside, leaving him to rot in the safe room for years to come. The final ending then appears, and instead of the animatronics' heads being lit up, they're all dark. The story is finally over. The children's souls are freed and justice is served, at least until the next 20 entries in the entire series. FNaF 3 holds a special place in my heart and many others. Despite the split opinions in the community, it still provided a huge amount of context to the story and marked a pivotal moment in the FNaF series. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this next one where I cover the real ending of Five Nights at Freddy's. And as always, I'm Jeeps, and I'll see you next time.